Hi, guys.
Good day.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello all. This is the official first where we are not only streaming our weekly podcast on YouTube, but we are also streaming it to our respective Instagram pages. So this is a great way for us to get more people involved in the station. But if you're new and you're looking at this live stream right now and you're like, this I've never seen before, we do a live podcast on Mondays with Brian Omilion, Grant Klassen, and Mason Marangella. That's me. And we are all guitar, rig, and pedal builders and involved in some of the manufacturing of guitar effects and accessories, and we have conversations about rig building and pedal boards and signal path and best practices therein. If you're wondering about where all the past episodes are, of course, you can join us over on our YouTube channel, which is Chairmen of the Boards, and we highly recommend you check us out there, but we're also happy to have you just right here on Instagram if you're there as well. And then, of course, these go on audio-only versions on all the common podcast apps, whether that's Apple or Amazon or Spotify, whatever it is, we're on all those. So with that out of the way, I think that we should talk about the topic at hand, if you gentlemen all agree, which is about pedal companies stick with the tried and true formula. Should they stay in their lane, or should they deviate from the things that they are best known for, and what are the consequences or risks in doing so? I think that this is a very interesting thing because we see a lot of pedals in our line of work being rig builders. And I have to say, in the time that I've been around, there have been a lot of trends as far as pedals are concerned, many of which have come and gone, very few that have stayed. And there are some brands that really try to chase the trends and sort of stay relevant by trying to sort of look at what's current and hot and then kind of chase that. And then other companies, one that comes to mind immediately without getting too far ahead of myself, is exotic. Like they've got a thing that they do, they stick with it, they don't release a lot of stuff, but everything that they release is always very well thought out, and they really prioritize trying to make something great and really investing in that product and trying to make it something that's going to be on boards for decades as opposed to sort of flavor of the month. Mm-hmm. To kind of calibrate, kind of curious where you all sort of land on this topic. Trends that you've seen. What are you guys seeing on your end, Brian or Grant? Somebody take it away.
I'll go, Grant.
Brian.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay, so
I go. There you go.
So Brian's about to tell you right now in 3, 2, 1. Go, Brian.
Well, I'm back, guys. Thanks for missing me last week. What I would say is, someone's already said it. They said your company, do as you wish, John, which I partially agree with. I think it's interesting when you get companies that say, I'm just going to throw it out. So like Chairmen. Digital, we talked about this in the group chat yesterday. Chairmen, yeah, if you're feeling Jamaican. When you get a company like that does mostly digital stuff, and they do it really well. They modulations, the Trinity, the Chairmen Trinity, as we know, like they do that stuff very well. And then they come out with like an analog overdrive from a couple weeks ago or an analog fuzz, and it just, I have yet to try it, so I can't say. It's just interesting to see some of these companies. It's kind of like when PRS started coming out with pedals, and you're just like, what the heck is the horse meat, or stuff like that, or like you're just like, what is this? Who came up with the names? And then you start seeing the pedal, and some people love it. And I remember working at the Sanctuary.
That would have been a perfect pedal for our thumbnail because we were trying to kind of think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Man, I knew that there was an obvious one that I should have had on there. The horse.
Yeah, horse meat. Yeah, like something like.
What is it called? The wind cries or cries?
Something with Mary.
Wind through
Mary.
the trees.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Something, one of them.
But like
yeah. It's like stuff like that. I just think it's interesting to see, like, just like some of those companies. come out with it, and I understand with it. Another one of them, it's just like our friends over at RJM. They do really well with their switchers. They do really great, and we love their switchers. Then they release some overdrive pedals, and they may not have done as great as their switching system. So I think there are definitely companies out there, and I'm excited to dive into. But Grant, I'm ready to hear from you.
I'm curious. I feel like we may have areas of the conversation today that get a little spicy, a little hot, a little peppery. I feel like I may disagree here a little bit at times, and so that's where I am curious to get into the conversation. Speaking from someone who it's part of my job to come up with new ideas for what we're going to do next. I can say I can understand where these companies could take a bit of the grass is greener approach, especially when things are quite volatile in the industry. It's like, man, what's the thing that's going to allow us to make payroll, to do something interesting and unique? And oftentimes it's easy to see a new category or a new approach technologically that you haven't done before. But I think the flip side of that is you're signing yourself up for potentially a lot of, depending on the size of your company, but a lot of pain and anguish. And you realize why companies specialize, because they know what they're good at and they've learned the painful lessons. But I like seeing the attempts. I love the experimentation. But I think the bigger thing, just to leave it quite broad here at the beginning, I think a bigger question here as well you have to ask is, are they responsible to their customers for anything? Are they responsible to their customers to deliver a product that is always excellent and stretches them and, delivers something great? If they are not responsible to their customers and their job is to experiment, come up with new things, even if they're not quite as good as they should be potentially, then I think the conversation changes quite quickly. So I'm excited to chat about this and see where we end up. Where we disagree is what I'm most excited about finding out today.
I'm interested. I'm interested in that.
But no, I think this will be a fun conversation.
Well, maybe the one place that might be interesting to start is sort of the marketplace. And I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that guitar players in general have sort of arrested development as it relates to introducing technology into their pedal boards. And for the most part, when we look at the most popular overdrives, delays, fill in the blank, pretty much any category, most of it is rooted in chasing a sound that existed 30, 40, 50 or more years ago. Mm-hmm. And so there is a lot of reward given to companies sort of reinterpreting designs that have already been done and sort of improving the mousetrap, so to speak. And I can see where that is a really kind of safe place to play. That playground is fairly safe to play. It's hard to sort of screw up. And I think that they're probably looking at the market and saying, I'm trying to come out with something that is innovative. I'm trying to come out with something that has not been done before. And often that is rejected by guitar players because it's too different than the things that they're used to, or there isn't any context for a hit recording that uses this sort of new technology or this different way of thinking about it. I think when I look at RJM, as you'd mentioned earlier, Brian, is they came out with these really cool overdrive devices that in essence give you, I don't remember how many, but let's say a dozen different overdrives that were still in the analog domain, switched digitally, had MIDI capability, and you would think that that would be a really cool thing. It's sort of pairing familiar things that people know about and then grafting sort of Ron's expertise in creating MIDI programmable overdrives. And my understanding is that it wasn't really a big hit in the same way that their switching products are. Mm-hmm. And there could be two reasons for that. That could be, well, maybe they just didn't have the right audience for that particular product or the marketing in order to effectively sell that product. Or maybe it was that the technology was sort of too far ahead of where sort of the median guitar player is that would benefit from that. And and that's an interesting question. Does it come down to the right marketing, or is it actually that guitar players don't, want that type of capability in their overdrive, and they're used to just sort of mechanical switches that bring things in and out? What do you guys think about sort of that balance between the marketing aspect and the technology sort of outpacing where the guitar pedal buying community is?
I mean, I look at certain companies and let's go back to Strymon. Strymon could make whatever pedal they want. They're going to sell a bunch of units. Like, they have built up a brand reputation that they put out good products. And so they can do, and I don't know the sales figures at all, so I'm kind of just taking an educated guess. They can put out something
Thousands.
like
Thousands
Fairfax.
in an initial release.
Yeah, they can put out something like the Fairfax, and even though it's something different, it has their branding, it has their style. People are going to buy that, myself included. Like, I didn't buy Fairfax, but I have no doubt that if I put it on my board or tested it out in a signal chain, it's going to sound great, and it's going to do what it was reported to do by them in their marketing. So there's some brand trust there. They've done a good job of building up their brand to where they can experiment, in my opinion. Whereas maybe smaller companies that don't have those same kind of resources, or other companies that just make a wrong call, perhaps, it's a lot more difficult in that realm. So I think almost you need to set up your company to be able to do this from the get-go, which I believe Strymon has done, purposefully or not. But the technology question, I mean, even you look at someone like Chase Bliss, who puts out their preamp with sliders, super expensive. If someone asked me, could you sell a overdrive pedal for $800 US? I don't know where they finished selling at before they discontinued, but let's say around $800 US, but not a chance. And here comes Chase Bliss, and they can do it. And they kind of prove everyone wrong. And there's some new, maybe not new technology, but new technology in the context of an overdrive pedal. MIDI control, cool sliders. It becomes a conversation piece. Look what my overdrive pedal can do. It moves automatically. That alone, like, people are paying a premium for that. And so they've set themselves up to be able to release something that people know will be good, possibly a little bit, gimmicky is probably too unfair a word, but innovative as far as that category goes. And so I think probably not the technology is outpacing the guitarists in some of these examples, but maybe has not been implemented in a way that it makes it easy for them to receive or easy for them to take on board in the context of their rig.
Yeah.
I think that this is definitely an interesting. Brian, go ahead. I want to hear your thoughts.
No. He mentioned Chase Bliss, and that's what we were talking about, which kind of prompted, I think, this topic. We were talking about it. I was on vacation or getting ready to go on vacation, and I've done a couple automatones. I've done a couple of CXMs on boards, and I mean, Grant and you guys both attest, they're not small units. They're not for everyone either. That's one of those things. But getting the notification about this new one coming out, which I don't really know anything about, so that's where I it's
a big time release.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the cover is not the book, type of thing. Like, you can't just read the cover to know everything it's gonna do. My kids love Mary Poppins, and so the cover is not the book. So open up and take a look. Like, that song always is in my head for a lot of these pedals that come out, and I was just I look at it and I'm like, oh, that looks cool, and then you see $9.99 price tag, and you're just like,
I actually didn't know the price.
Jesus.
It doesn't surprise me, but
USD.
Yeah, that's expensive.
You're just
yeah.
$1,000. Does that fold laundry for me too? What is it doing? Is it turning out my coffee? It's one of those things you expect it from Chase Bliss. Excuse me, I'm still getting over allergies from Florida, Texas mixture. And I think it's one of those, you expect it from Chase Bliss. You expect it from some of these companies, to do this kind of stuff, GFI, to do these types of, really complex pedals. Fender coming out with, Fender having Fender guitars and Fender amps. That's pretty much a staple. when I hear Fender, I don't think guitar pedals. First time I was ever introduced to Fender pedals was a rep, and he brought it in. He's like, and the battery box is on the front. And I was like, you make guitar pedals? Like, I just was one of those things. So I definitely think, and someone even mentioned it, I think they're in a spot where brands, or what is it? It says, once a brand is known for something, it's hard to break away from that, which I completely agree with. It's like JHS, if they came out with a digital multi-effects Strymon timeline type pedal, you'd just be like, whoa, like I didn't expect it. You could like, okay, that's cool. Like I just, like, you wouldn't expect it. Or it's just like a volume pedal company. It's like, I don't know, Hilton coming out with an overdrive. You'd just be like, I remember back in the day when I was at Jackson Ampworks, and we were talking about, because I have label tape on my sweatshirt, I guess. Sorry guys. We were at Jackson, and we were talking about coming out guitar pedals, and we kept, like, it was one of those, like, kind of like, we need money type of thing. So what should we do? Like, oh, we could do guitar pedals. Those are easy. And I was like, but are we good?
We need money. What should we do?
Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, I have all these designs for these cool overdrive pedals. I'm like, but we're an amp company. Why are we coming out with overdrive pedals? We're known for guitar amps. Yeah. Obviously, later on, Jackson Audio came about, and they're doing great stuff. But it's one of those things, like, sometimes I wonder if some of these companies that start releasing this, and it's hard not to see, and I'm sure I'll get flack for this because I'm weaving over the place. I'm reeling back from vacation, but it's hard to see a company like Strymon, and I'm not trying to crap on Strymon, to come out with a Fairfax or this fuzz analog pedal and then not go, whoa, where's the Timeline MX, or where's the Mobius MX, or where are these pedals that you've released years ago? Amazing Big Sky MX, parallel routing, all that kind of stuff. I understand that they can be different departments, but, like, and the same thing with neural. People are like, oh, why haven't you done this? And it's like, well, those are separate divisions that do that kind of stuff. So I get that, but it's definitely, sometimes I wonder if it's like, is this just like a filler? Like we talked about, didn't you, Mason, say the Flint was like that? The Flint was like a filler.
100%.
So,
The Flint was definitely, for people who don't know the story, it was, I don't remember, this is no pun intended here, I don't remember the release timeline of, like, when things came out in terms of the succession. I don't remember if the Mobius was before the Flint or what it was, but my understanding is I think it was the El Capistan that had been out before it. They had a lot of success with that. It was a wonderful campaign. And they were, maybe they were designing Mobius. I can't remember exactly which was the next pedal to come out, but I think it was one of the larger form factor Strymon devices. And they basically were too far away from that in order to sustain themselves with what they already had out. And so they needed sort of another cash influx by way of a new product, And so I think that they had already developed components for the tremolo and for the reverb as far as their algorithms, and so they said, well, why don't we release something sort of in an intermediary sense as a device that's then going to kind of allow us to have the funds that we need in order to continue to create Mobius, or it could have been Mobius, maybe it was the Big Sky, I don't remember. But I'm sure somebody in the comments can tell us the sequence of the releases. But that was basically used as a placeholder. I don't know that it was thought that it would be as successful as it's been. I think it's been one of their most successful and best-selling products that they've ever made, and certainly ubiquitous amongst guitar players, pedalboards, and celebrity guitar players, whether it's John Mayer or fill in the blank guys are all using this. And so it's sort of a happy accident is what I'm trying to say, and I think a lot of times companies' hands are forced to have to make adjustments like this because of budgetary constraints or the length of development, because almost nothing when you're trying to do something like they're doing in that type of innovation, it almost never goes according to plan. There's always hiccups and things of that nature that occur as the development is happening, and that's just part of the process. But another thing that struck me that I wanted to comment on really quickly that Grant had said was where he talked about sort of like the infrastructure of the company sort of allows for this to happen. And I think that one huge advantage that Strymon had over a lot of other companies is that because so many of their employees that founded Strymon came from Line 6, in Line 6 at their peak, they had a really good blueprint to follow in order to sort of understand, I think, firstly, the marketplace and how, what it takes to get into a retailer and how to service dealers. And there was very much sort of like a Line 6 way of doing things that would be a really great training ground, almost like, I'm not going to say it was militaristic, but militaristic in the sense that there was a really finite framework of the way that you do things and a process for things. And they were bringing sort of that process over to Strymon, and they really had a really, really good scaffold to build that from, where they had already had an effective model. And this is why when somebody ever says, hey, I want to get into the pedal business, how should I do it? I always say that the best way is to work for somebody that's doing it effectively. Yeah. Work for a Robert Keeley. Work for a Strymon. Because they have an infrastructure in place that you can observe and work in and understand and maybe hold multiple positions. So I think firstly you really understand that this is what you want to do, because it will give you a very clear understanding of sort of how much work it takes and the number of people that are needed in order to make that happen. But it also, again, just gives you a framework that then you can take, and when you're building your own business, you kind of have somebody who's sort of become an unofficial mentor, if not a mentor for you, as you sort of make your way into the world of pedals. But anyway, I just wanted to add that comment as an aside about Strymon, and that it was really, I think, important, sort of their branding strategy, which I think was very deliberate.
Oh no, absolutely.
Have you guys ever watched the video? This is not in the normal guitar realm that we usually talk about, but relevant to this. Have you guys ever watched the Simon Sinek video? It's very, very popular. The Start With Why one, and he talks about Apple and how Apple can come out with all these unrelated products, from phones to computers, and so on and so forth.
No, but he's 100% right. I mean, who would have saw the AirTags coming?
Yeah, exactly. But this video, Start With Why, basically says most companies start with, the what they do, then they talk about how, and then that eventually leads to their why. And Apple starts from inside out, goes, why do we exist? And that leads to creating these products down the line. And I just feel like that's so relevant for this, like why certain companies can pull off unrelated products in this context, in this industry. And yes, definitely a classic TED Talk video. And and other companies kind of get pigeonholed. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but limits their options in an uncertain future. You want to have available options to you, available paths that you can take. And so not a direct correlation here, but definitely, kind of relevant in this kind of realm.
I think it's totally relevant because think of how many companies are in the place that Strymon is in, for example, where they could really do that. That they could be super specialized in sort of digital, fully DSP based products for the most part, and be able to come out with an analog something and be effective at it. And I think you could make the argument that they're sort of doing it strategically, where it's not a huge, like a super release. Like most of these things, like the Fairfax and the Fuzz, they're smaller form factors. They're less expensive than a normal Strymon pedal. So sort of dipping your toe in. I'm not saying that they're not putting the all of their energy behind it, but there's a little bit of a parachute. If things don't go, or the release doesn't go as well as they want, it's not like they've invested
they can make it disappear,
years of man hours in an algorithm or something like that. So I think that's really smart in of them to do it, and I agree that even I think a really tried and true company like a Full Tone, for example, they couldn't. As popular as they are in the analog world of distortion and overdrive and all that stuff, came out with a MIDI controlled digital, delay that was trying to compete against a Strymon. I don't think that they'd have a chance. I think it would be a really, really hard sell. I don't know. The only company that I've seen that's really tried that's gone sort of the opposite direction, because Strymon's gone like digital to kind of adding in more analog options. You could make an argument that they started with analog, because I think their very first pedal was actually an analog optical compressor, if I'm not mistaken. Because I think they started with like a module that would plug into a line 6 like spider valve that I think was like a 12AX7 and kind of gave like a analog front end to a digital amp. But the first pedal was a compressor. And then they went into sort of the digital devices, stayed digital, and then they've sort of come back to analog with a few of their offerings. Wampler is an example that somebody did the opposite. He was like fully baked in, just dyed in the wool analog overdrive primarily guy. And then, I think it was the Terraform was maybe the first device that was kind of a departure into that digital domain. And then also, I think he's come out with some other stuff subsequently. I think even he has like a Class D power amp thing now.
This is the it's not the pedal amp but it's a pair
head, something like that.
Pedal head with Synergy, right?
Yeah.
Right. And because of, I think I don't know the division of labor and how it's created, but I know that he's under the umbrella of the boutique amp distribution, which is the guys that do Friedman and Morgan and Soldano and a lot of other companies. And I know that they have some engineers that are specifically for them. And so I don't know, if Brian's doing the analog side and then somebody else is sort of taking over the MIDI capabilities, which is sort of like a totally different muscle. And Brian's certainly very smart and capable, and I'm sure he could do it. But I wonder if just from an efficiency standpoint, if you're like, hey, I'm not as skilled as this guy who's been doing it for 50 years or something like that, and can recite the MIDI protocols in his sleep, I would be deferential to that person as well. I'm not sure how it worked, but he's somebody that went the opposite way. I don't know how sort of effective those pedals are. If we do, you guys see many of the digital Wampler pedals in practice with pedal boards?
Not really.
Honestly, I don't see many Wampler pedals in general these days. There's a couple, like Tumnus comes up, and the compressor, the Corey Wong compressor comes up
absolutely.
a bit.
Ego, is that them? Wampler?
No.
The Ego? Yeah.
Ego, yeah.
I just had one on a board recently. I would say of all the Wampler stuff, the compressor is probably the top one. I've had a Terraform a couple times. The problem is this. It's just one of those things. Is when
Tell
you
us the problem.
tell you the problem. is when one of these companies are coming out with these pedals, yes, they have a manual. So like there's some companies that come out with manuals. Well, you read it and you just scratch your head. You're like, my head hurts after this. Like you're just like, it's exhausting. So seeing companies like Morningstar who come out with basically a digital how-to, that's awesome. That's dumbing it down.
Or Chase Bliss manuals. They're basically another product release. Those things.
Yeah, like
insane.
like these, and the Terraform I think is one of them too. And there's a lot of ChatGPT or whoever it is. I'm like, it's helping me answer these questions. But even like from a rig building standpoint, some of these pedals, and people always make the thing like, how do you know so many things about so many of these pedals? It's like, you don't understand how many times I've been in these manuals. I've been in the timeline still to this day. I've owned 10 timelines. I've been in the timeline manual 100 times, just all the different messages and all different programming states and everything you can do. But I think people look at the Terraform, and I think it's a great pedal too. But then they start seeing you have to do all these certain things to do these. Like I had one guy sold his Jackson Audio compressor because he had to hold down the 2 foot switches while powering up the pedal to just change the MIDI channel. Like that's how simple it was. I was like, oh, then you just turn this boost knob and it flashes for how many MIDI channels. Didn't want that. So I think a lot of these companies, Wampler included,
got an ego compressor.
Literally like went and got something a lot more simpler. It was one of these like just a lot easier to, because these manuals I think are just so in depth that it's an overload of information. And you're like, I just want to do this one thing. And the Terraform for me was one of those things. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to change the MIDI channel. Like I know how to do it on a Chase Bliss pedal. Hold it down, plug in the power, send it the command. Like that's all you do. Like it's really simple. But I think some of these, it's like, oh, like I was talking with Robert Keeley a while ago when we were talking about
Shout out Robert Keeley.
Shout out Robert Keeley. I think we're talking about something probably about the Halo or something. And I kept joking, like, you really shouldn't make the Halo MIDI. You really should make the Halo MIDI. I was like, but if you do, you have to make it stupid. Like, stupid, simple MIDI. You have to make sure you can do it really easily. Yeah, I was like, you got to make it simple to where people aren't buying it and basically going, I want the old one. Because if you make it too complex, then no one's going to do it. So no one's going to want it. So I think there's definitely some of those companies that are like, they put all their eggs. Yeah, they put all their eggs in this one basket. It's like they want to do as much as they can, and I'm like, you don't have to. And some of them just get thrown to the side. Kind of like, I'm gonna be honest, just like for me. And I'm curious, Grant, because I said this earlier, and I think I triggered something.
The spicy part.
Was it the RJM? I said something about RJM Overdrive. Is that what you had a spiciness about, or was that something else?
No.
Okay. I said the
RJM.
RJM.
It'd be more about Chase Bliss.
I like
Chase
Bliss.
Spicy one, Grant. Tell us.
Well, no, I mean, we were chatting before the show a little bit, and you guys had brought up Chase Bliss in the comments. Like, I actually really like the preamp. It's not for me, but I really like it as a concept and an idea, and I don't think it was that left of field for Chase Bliss. A stretch, yes. A gamble, yes. But I think it fit Chase Bliss as a company. Oh, yeah. And then the other thing I was thinking we might be disagreeing on throughout the show, which I'm still curious about, is I kind of like it when companies take risks and gamble. You got to gamble responsibly. That's a famous saying up here in Canada. But I think
we need that DraftKings sponsorship.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. But I really like it when companies like, we haven't done this before, but it's within our budget, all this, it's doable, but it could tank and it might hurt us a little bit. I think that's great, assuming that you can do it in a way that makes sense for everybody. But I don't like it when companies strictly stay within their lane for the reasoning, and this is the big caveat, I guess, for the reasoning of it's safe and it's predictable, and I also say kind of boring. I think that you should take risks and chances. That's where I'm at. I might change my mind tomorrow, but I do like it when I see companies trying. They're like, oh, that's a bit weird. Even if you get to like, yeah, that's a bit weird. Brian's, I think the best example of this show so far, Brian's call out of PRS making pedals. I remember thinking like, I feel like I am on the outside of an inside joke. I don't understand this.
I know. Who lost the bet?
But they did it, They did it. They took a risk. Maybe they'll keep doing it. Maybe they won't. I probably vote. But I admire them and I applaud them for trying. And I don't know. I think it's a great thing to take some little risks there. And yeah, that's my only thing where we may differ on this perspective.
The PRS thing definitely came to mind. Or there's one Shocks power supply that I can think of too that was a real risk that subsequently I don't think is on the market anymore. If you can do any research on that,
since Me Too or something, around there.
Yeah. I don't think taking risks is a bad deal. I just think it sucks to see companies put all their eggs in a basket. Like I was mentioning about Ron with RJM. Like we've all had plenty of conversations with Ron. Like he is a brilliant guy. He has like a designer. The stuff that he can come up with in his designing and gonna release, like it's really cool. And it does suck to see they put all this time and effort into something, and then like it doesn't sell very well. And I could be wrong. I'm sure there could be hundreds of them on boards. I really don't know, but I don't see them on boards. And I would say collectively between the three of us, like we do a really decent amount of boards probably in a year. And I don't think any of us have ever really posted about them, but I think that's where someone even said it is like Strymon could come out with something, and like, who was it? Brian Meter made the comment. He's like, Strymon could come out with it and you wouldn't even know, like you wouldn't even thought about it, but then you need it. And it's like, they don't really have competition in their own way, even though there is Eventide, there is Maris, there are all these other companies. I don't know. I just feel like there's something about they're in their own lane. They're like, I don't know.
But I challenge Strymon to come out with the fart pedal. Like their
yes!
fart pedal.
Presets.
That would be the one that's going to really stretch.
If it was MIDI controlled. If it was
Unity
analog,
controlled fart
I
pedal.
think they would actually have a chance in that one. Yeah,
Do they
Yeah.
need donors if it's analog? Because
they would.
I could recruit
would.
my 8-year-old
Are
son.
you offering to provide
Yeah.
models, Brian?
I am. I will send it. I will in a
500
glass jar.
millisecond, IRs.
I have to be on site though for the
1,000
for the
millisecond or
sample.
bust.
Golly. So yeah, no, I like I said, I agree with you. I definitely think some of these companies taking the risk of it, it's fine. But
Don't agree with me, Brian. It's less interesting.
no,
that way.
I don't think it. I'm
just
not
Stick it to
hating
'em,
on
Brian.
them. Yeah, no, I like to see it, but then there is just some. I'm back and forth. I think there are some that it's like, well, why did you do that? So, and
Yeah,
someone
I
said
have
it.
respect
Yeah,
for it.
yeah.
I have respect for it. I have respect for trying new things. I think the thing that and again, it's like, I don't know, should we even have an opinion about this? Like, right, I think somebody said earlier, it's their company, they do what they want.
Yeah.
I think the ones that sort of, I don't know, maybe feel less palatable for me are the ones that just seem like it's chasing a trend.
Yep,
So, like
agreed.
the idea that a pedal is that somebody's going to have a super aggressive release schedule. There's some companies that will release like every 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe
I
6
don't
to
even
12
understand
weeks.
how that's possible.
And to me,
That's
it
nuts.
seems like it's impossible to do a great job with that aggressive of a release schedule and ensure that everything is to a minimum standard. Because unless you have this crazy large development team, there's just no way that all those things could have gone through the vetting process. And so it ends up like the customer is sort of your beta tester, and or you're just making slight modifications to stuff that you've already done that's sort of maybe a little bit more tried and true. So in terms of the circuit is not maybe so much of a risk, but is just an easy way to sort of get more products sold. And then if it doesn't work out, you can then just cut your losses, and then it ends up on Musician's Friend Stupid Deal of the Day. And then you sort of just start over on the next project. And there's been some examples of that over time where there's just a ton of pedals. And I'm not 100% sure the motivation. Like, usually I think it's like, it could be a payroll motivated thing. Like, if you've got a big staff, and like an easy way as a pedal company to generate a lot of revenue is to come out with new pedals a lot. Now, those new pedals may not stay on your line very long, but you're sort of swinging at the piñata and you're hoping you get a hit. And then if one of those pedals actually materializes into something cool, that's on your product line, indefinitely. But for the stuff that doesn't, it just drops off, and that's just sort of the spaghetti noodles that fell off the wall, and didn't stick when you threw a bunch of them there. And so I have a little less respect for that, because all it does is sort of saturate the market more, and it's not really like your most thoughtful contribution to the world of pedals. But like, I know this too. Like, if I come out with a new product, I know that I'll sell a lot of them initially. Like, the difference, I mean, every brand is different, but I'll speak for myself. The difference between my best-selling pedals, like a Vertex Boost or a Buffer, and one that was abominable, like the train wreck style effect called the T-Drive, the differences between those two in their initial release was negligible. Because
Really?
all
Interesting.
of the dealers are buying in to the product that you've spent a lot of time on, and they're treating it as though it's going to be successful, and they sort of have to operate that way. Where you get to start to see the differentiation is after they've sold through, what is sort of the second and third round of repurchasing of that product actually look like. And then you really have a sense as to whether this is something that's viable or something that is a total dud. And so you could see from the perspective of a pedal company, if they're just releasing new stuff all the time, they're getting the big orders. Because if you've got a big dealership network, and I think you have to be a minimum size. You can't just be like a little selling direct company. But if you've got a pretty good dealership size, and we've got, Hal Leonard distributes our stuff in the U.S., and then we've got Sweetwater and all the big guys. We know that even if all of them just bought 2 pedals, you're talking about thousands of pedals right there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're buying usually more than that. And so this is a way to sort of keep generating revenue because you release new pedals. Like, well, I got to carry the new, brand XYZ Overdrive Plus, and they buy it, and then you've got a new influx of cash.
Yeah.
But it's sort of an insincere way to do it, in my opinion. So I have less respect for that. I have a lot more respect for like something that's like, innovation. Like, I have tons of respect for like what Ron at RJM did with that Overdrive, the Overture. He spent a ton of time, like years, developing it.
Yes.
And you feel terrible that it's such a well thought out thing, but it just never got any traction practically in the marketplace for whatever reason, marketing, brand awareness, whatever it is. I want to continue to talk more about this, and if things have come up for you as we've talked through this, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. You can of course put your comment right on Instagram. We also welcome you to join us over on the Chairman of the Board's YouTube channel, where we have a live chat going. We will be right back in a moment. We're going to talk about a few sponsors that make the show possible. By way of supporting them, you are in turn supporting us in the show and the continuation of it every single Monday. We will get right back to the episode, but before we do, I want to tell you about one of the sponsors that makes this podcast possible every single week. It is our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas. Now, not only do they have one of the premier guitar stores in all of Texas, but they also have an amazing website where you're able to get practically anything that you hear us talking about during any Chairman of the Board's episode, whether it's boutique guitars, amps, pedals, or more mainstream brands. They have it all there, and they have the service and staff to make it happen. So head over to our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary, guitarsanctuary.com. Tell them the Chairman sent you.
All right, let's talk about the biggest news in the recent guitar world, which ironically comes in a smaller package. The guys over at Neural DSP have released the Quad Cortex Mini. For years, we've been putting the Quad Cortex on pedalboards and racks, and now they have made it a little bit easier for us by shrinking it almost 50% smaller. We're not talking about the light version here. It's the exact same processing muscle and capturing technology, just with that gorgeous 7-inch screen, a couple less foot switches, but still packs a punch. All right, my plugin people, if you utilize these on a daily, this is basically the holy grail of plugins, the John Mayer X plugin. This isn't just a tribute. They went to his house, they captured these amps, and they're giving them to you in this small package that you can take anywhere you want. If you're wanting to upgrade your board or your DAW to Neural DSP right now, use the code Chairman to get 30% off all of your plugins.
If you're listening to this episode halfway through building your pedalboard, you need to check out Bestronix, also known as BTPA. This is the place to go to get all of the remaining plugs, jacks, cable, maybe even patch bays or looms to help you finish building your rig and building it the right way the first time. Brad at Bestronix is here to help you guys find the right parts for your unique pedalboard and to also get you these parts at a discount. Use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, to get 10% off your order at btpa.com. Tell them the Chairman sent you.
And we're back.
We're back.
So, where do you think we should take it from here? I know that we didn't really get a chance to debrief my last monologue there, my TED Talk.
TED Talk's always welcome.
Give a lot of them. Any sort of things that brought up for you, Grant or Brian? We combined you and called you Brant.
Give me that. Can you give me the highlights again of the last section that you're talking about?
Really, just looking at that some companies are being sort of very thoughtful in sort of their output. So we talked about RJM as an example of that, and the Overture, something that was a long arc of development, but just didn't get any traction in the marketplace, relative to companies that maybe have a larger distribution model and are just releasing pedals frequently, because that can be a really effective way, maybe not to have long-standing pedals, but to have frequent releases that bring in new cash flow because they know that their dealers are going to buy at least some amount of new products. Multiply that by several hundred dealers, you're talking about thousands of pedals, at a median price of $200 each, and obviously the dealers are buying it for less, but it's still, that could result in hundreds of thousands of dollars for each new product release. So curious if you have any thoughts
I have
on
two
that.
perspectives where I'd wear two different hats for it. As a customer, that drives me a bit nuts. As in, if I see a company come out with a new product, I want it to be something that is designated or designed to fill a hole in the market, not to simply try and get me to buy a pedal that is a almost part for part replica of something else with a new diode, that just doesn't, as a customer, that doesn't excite me. As a business owner, I'm a little bit jealous of the fact that some of these companies can spin out products so fast. Yeah. And they know, like, oh, we release this product and it'll keep us profitable. We'll make more money this year. Like, I wish Goodwood could do that type of thing, but we are so small. Any product that we do is going to take over a year to develop. Even something simple, it just takes ages for us. And so I am a little envious. Again, grass is always greener. I'm a little envious of the fact that some of these companies can just, in 6 weeks, we're going to release a new product and it'll make us $400,000, on the low end and a couple million on the high, and then we'll move on to the next thing. We just can't do that. So as a business owner, I like the business model, and if it works for you and you remain profitable, you're probably doing something right because your customers keep buying over the long haul. But I just don't love the idea of putting more stuff out into the world that isn't really going to make a dent, and that realistically, let's be honest, these companies don't believe in. That part kind of bugs me a little bit, more from the customer side than anything else. So yeah, I think I'm a little bit hypocritical depending on which hat I'm wearing in that question.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a pedal manufacturer, so I have a hard time, like, understanding. I don't know. I don't know how to say what I want to say. Let me gather my thoughts so I don't just start rambling. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Mason, until I don't want to ramble.
Yeah. Well, I hear what you're saying, Greg. I think that it is. I think the one thing I would say about what you're talking about is that we're assuming that the customer knows this, right? Like, usually
Sure.
the marketing is not saying, and all is change a diode, as though that's like.
Imagine honest marketing. Guys, we were strapped for cash and we needed something, so we changed the input resistance value by 10%. Done.
And it's going to make it darker,
Yeah.
and I can see elements of that. Like, I could see where even I could be accused of that. Like, for example, one thing that came to mind is like the steel string pedal, right? There's been multiple different incarnations of that. So there was like, the original one, which was fairly large, and then kind of the pedal trends changed to a smaller form factor. And so it was redesigned in a smaller form factor, but ostensibly the same product. Now, you could make an argument to say, well, that was just a cash grab, but really it was like, it seemed like everything was moving that direction. It seems like that trend has actually been one that has stayed. The small form factor pedals still are very popular on pedal boards.
Yep.
And so that seemed to be something that actually had a functional benefit to the customer. It didn't increase in price or anything like that. So it wasn't an intention to sort of, have any sort of deception or anything like that. However, some people complained about the EQ of the pedal, and from my perspective, I was saying, here is a Dumble style clean tone, and this is based on the amplifiers that I've had access to that were made by Dumble of this model. They had a lot of really exaggerated low end, but some people, even though I can say, well, this is functionally correct, practically they were like, well, it's actually too much low end, and when I use small combos, it's just obliterated by bass. So then releasing a different version that had an EQ shift that sort of took care of some of that issue and sort of tightened up the low end so that it wasn't quite as big and flubby sounding as it could be for in a Dumble. And that was only like, a couple parts change, is the reality of it. and then we named it something else. We changed the color, of course. But you could make a claim to say, now it didn't come out like right on the heels of the other one, to try to just like have a 12-week release schedule. But it was sort of predicated on listening to what customers were saying and then trying to address that with sort of a modification that made sense. You could say, well, why don't you just keep it the same name, and just have another, MK3 or something like that. And there's probably a good argument that could be had there. But so I'm saying this to say I could have been accused of that, and it wasn't like a 12-week release between one and the next to make it a cash grab. But I think that there are sort of like principal differences between a company that is doing this to try to make it more usable and listening to what the customers are saying is different than just saying, okay, we're going to do, this exact same product, full rebrand, put it out there, and see if this version of it gets more traction, sort of thing. And so I think that those are fundamentally different. I guess, it's like people are making a living if it's a good quality product and their customers like it, then I guess who are we to say that it's not good or bad or whatever it is. But I just noticed that there is sort of this dynamic that companies have, and some of them err more on that side, and then some of them are like Exotic, which I talked about in the opening.
Yeah.
They don't release a lot of pedals, but everything that they release is so deliberate and so well thought out, and they're not releasing it with the intention that it's going to be here today and gone tomorrow. Most of their line has been very consistent, for a really long time. I mean, they were one of the first pedal companies on YouTube.
Yeah.
Probably the first with their reality web videos that, were with a handheld over-the-shoulder camcorder.
Beautiful.
But they've got a lot of staying power.
Yeah.
Their first
Even,
releases, RC boosters, they're still ubiquitous.
Oh, I love
I was
the
just
RC.
building a board. I was just building a board for myself the other day, and first thing I grabbed, RC booster, and I was just looking up when that was released. 2002. That's a 24-year-old pedal, and it's still one of my absolute goes to. Like
It's
the
the
EQ
best.
on that thing is beautiful. It's such a musical pedal, but it's the most basic thing I have on my board, and it just sounds great. And I will probably continue grabbing that pedal for many, many years to come. So yeah, I mean, I guess there's an argument there where the release doesn't need to be fancy, technologically relevant. Like it doesn't have an AI modeler built in or MIDI control or digipots so I can do presets. It just does one thing extremely well. And I think I love these pedals that stick around. And I would say my thoughts on the Vertex thing, because one of my questions I wanted to ask you, Mason, is if you've ever been tempted to go for like a grass is always greener thing, or like, oh, we could make some money there, but I don't really believe in it. Like, has the temptation been there for you with someone that's a bigger company than myself or Brian? Mm-hmm. And how do you gate that temptation as a pedal manufacturer that you have the resource to do that if you wanted to? But I don't see you doing that from the outside, is what I should say.
Well, I think if you know much about the history of my company, you know that if there any sort of temptation that I had that was to try to like jump the line it had a pretty dramatic consequences. And
Fair enough. Learned your lesson
to the beginning. And so to me, the sort of the backstop or the lesson learned was fairly early on in my career, where it was like, there are really no shortcuts to that. And I would say that, at least in the near term following that, the scrutiny on the brand was pretty intense because of that. And so, it was really sort of like a play it by the book, sort of event from that point forward. And so I've certainly, I'm sure that there's been times where it's like, oh, hey, like this would be cool, or this could be an opportunity here. But, our release schedule is not really that aggressive. I mean, there's been some years maybe where we've released 2 pedals, but if it wasn't like 2 pedals that were like scratch things. It was maybe like one was, never before done. And then another one would be like an example, like the steel string, where like we made it the same circuit, but in a smaller enclosure. Like that's not as big of a lift.
It's
if
not a
you've
6
already
weeks release
established
schedule.
the circuit and it's really just about consolidating the size and you know, in the enclosure or something like that. But for the most part, I've never really gotten, you know, too far into that, because again, it's as you recognize, the resource to create something like that is hard, and it's generally just me and then 2 different engineers that I contract to for sort of improvements of the circuit design and PC board layout and mechanical. And so there isn't a workforce that's just on this stuff 24/7 and always pumping out new products. And so for that reason, because there's sort of 3 moving parts and schedules to align, and they don't just work exclusively for me, that takes time, you know, to be able to develop. And remember, like, if you're a pedal builder, your time in development that's maybe, I don't know, if you're lucky, 30% of your time, but maybe more realistically 10 or 15% of your time, because you're maybe managing other people, and you've got, you know, you have to have an eye on your finance and payroll, and you have to have an eye on, you know, personnel
Email,
and
socials,
human resources, and you have all, you're doing all these other things. And so, you know, your hands are in a lot of different pots. And new products is only a portion of that. And so when you see a lot of the really big companies like a JHS or something like that, there's guys that all they're doing full time is just designing pedals. It's all they're doing.
Oh yeah,
So
for sure.
around the clock. And that's one way to do it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for what we do, and sort of what I consider our specialty, we don't need that volume in order to make it work. You know, and YouTube is a big part of that. You know, that we have other means to, you know, either sell our products or create interest in the things that we're doing.
Yeah.
That's not to say that JHS doesn't. I think they're probably the biggest company, pedal company that's on social media as far as like creating content and bringing in new eyes and customers through the content that they create. I think they've got a really, really, from an outsider perspective, I don't know anything about the inner workings of it. It looks like they've really got it figured out.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think I during the ad break, I saw Mason, you comment on one of the streams about Fractal, and and I'm curious, you guys, because you know Fractal is known for their, you know, their rack systems and everything, and then they have their FM9, FM3 series, but then like they came out with like the VP4, like their smaller units and stuff like that, like these smaller. I'm curious is that like, would you consider that smaller unit like that them staying true to what they're doing? Because I feel like it's, you know, they're kind of, I don't know, they downsized their platform or their stuff. Is it to just like reach a different audience or a budget-friendly audience? Or because like someone mentioned it in the thing, the Boss plug out, like that, like Boss tried to do something by doing a pedal with a plug-in type of capability, because like something that they haven't done really before, and some people loved it, some people hate it. It's one of those things. But I'm curious, like I've installed one of these VP4s on a board, but that's it. But like Fractal is also one of those, I feel like, do you think they have competition between many? I mean, like you got Neural, you got Fractal, but I feel like Fractal is so in depth of like what you can edit and tweak and fine tune that it kind of like they're in their own lane. Do you guys do you understand is my question confusing? Do you feel like they're in their own lane, or do you think they feel like they have any competition that they need to worry about? Excuse me.
What do you think, Mason?
Edit
Sorry,
and tweak and fine tune that it kind of like they're in their own lane. Do you guys feel? Do you understand what is my question confusing? Do you feel like they're in their own lane? Or do you think they feel like they have any competition that they need to worry about?
Can you repeat the question, Brian? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Mason? I have like a weird like edit and tweak and fine tune that it kind of like they're in their own. Can you guys hear me?
Sorry, we had an echo going on there. For a
Yeah,
second.
that was
All right.
really weird. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, there was somebody that was in the chat that was talking about erectile dysfunction related things. So I was trying to figure out how to get him out.
Oh,
It's a
They're
valid
out
question, but not
Okay.
not one usually associated with pedals. So-
Unless your tone is flaccid, you know,
My
and
gosh.
you just get a buffer and you're good.
Here, we're talking about a new product already, right here. You know, this is
Well,
what this
there
new
was that-
pedal will do for you.
That
Oh my
Corey
gosh.
Wong. You remember when Corey Wong had this show and he had this like it was kind of shot like a pharmaceutical commercial. I think it was called Compress X, and it was like, you know, kind of like how a compressor sort of, you know, revitalized his tone.
Beautiful.
You know, and the wife comes up behind him and she's like, "Thanks, Compress X," you know, that sort of thing.
Of course, Corey Wong would do that of all the
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, just
But-
Brian
but
was
back to the
Brian was
topic.
chatting
No,
about
I'm just
about
gonna
the
yeah,
fractal stuff
Okay,
in relation
yeah.
and yeah.
And I think they're difficult. I know which I jog my memory. I know what comment you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, because they're difficult to use, and I think like most of the people that we see using them on sort of really big stages, like I'm thinking of Keith Scott with Bryan Adams and Bryan Adams himself.
Yeah.
Justin Derrico with Pink. Are a few that come to mind that have sort of made the conversion. I think Dory LaBelle also uses them, and I think he's also does stuff with Voice and American Idol and some of the other
Yeah.
you know, bigger television shows. The thing that all those guys have in common is that Fractal is basically coming in and programming it. James Valentine's another one I can think of with Maroon 5. They're basically having a rep from Fractal come and program it for them. And so it sort of takes some of the challenges that an ordinary person would have out of the equation, because like a fractal is an example. I think that I'll say right out of the bat, right off the bat, they sound great.
Yeah, they do.
Especially when you're listening to them through monitors, you know, and you're listening to them in playback. It's very difficult to tell the difference. I would say that's also true of Neural DSP. I think the difference between a quad cortex and an Axe Effects is like it's pretty hard to get a quad cortex to sound bad. It is very easy to get an Axe Effects to sound bad because there are so many options, and if you don't really know what, you know, input impedance means, and you just, you know, jack up that knob, you know, you can really affect things, especially on like the cabinet and miking side. Like they're giving you so many options, and it's really tailored to, I think, a really intelligent and knowledgeable customer on the kind of the tone spectrum. They really know all about miking techniques and studio techniques and recording studios, because it gives you all of those options and allows you to manipulate them. And some of the other technology, like with Neural, they're sort of saying, we know that this is there's a narrow range of parameters here which are really usable, and so that's much more difficult to screw up on a quad cortex, and I think that's why you see so many more people using them live now, because they don't. Neural is not sending out a rep to show somebody how to capture their rig. You know, like it's designed so that a regular person with average intelligence like me could plug this thing in and capture their amps and be like, all right, I feel good about this. It worked. And now I can take it on my tour, and I don't have to have somebody that's, you know, coming there to do it. And I think that's true of a lot of the professionals I know. They've had people from the brand come out and actually physically program it, or like with the Edge, there's another guy I can think of. Robert Bradshaw programmed the whole Axe Effects for him. It wasn't like the Edge's tech could even do it. You know, it's like, and that tells you if the tech for the Edge can't do it, and they need Robert Bradshaw to do it all, that's like a level of tech understanding that it far exceeds what the regular person can do.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
That has been my my biggest feedback from customers. I think maybe I've used Fractal 1 or 2 times and I didn't have to go into depth with programming, but the feedback from the customers always been option paralysis, overload. I'm overwhelmed by what I should or shouldn't, or should I touch that? Should I worry about this? All these parameters within. But agreed that the feedback has always been, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, nobody's like saying it sounds terrible, but a lot of them are having to spend a lot. I mean, the furthest I got was Axe FX 2.
Yeah.
And I kind of had like the presets that I liked, and I think one of my buddies gave me some of his presets that he used on his Axe 2, and I pretty much just like stuck with those because I was like, gosh, this thing, you can get in so much trouble in this thing once you start routing in parallel and all this stuff. Now their newer stuff looks cooler, like the virtual pedalboard thing looks really cool, and I know a lot of people have used that, especially for their wet stuff, and have just said like, instead of an M9 or something like that, like what you would have seen in a wet kind of pedalboard situation, they're just using that, and
for sure
they love it. So,
and I need to revisit. I had the Axe FX 3 for, I think I had it for 8 or 9 months. That I was using it pretty consistently. I had one of my clients is a Day to Remember. They're a hardcore band, and they Neil reached out, was like, hey, are you possibly available to do this like 2-week tour run? And I was like, oh, sure, maybe. And he's like, but you have to know Fractal. You have to know how to use the Fractal and stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm not as familiar with it. Best of luck to you. Which sucks, because when you grow up with, like, I grew up listening to this band. So, like, to be asked to possibly do a quick little 2-week thing with them, which would have been a lot of fun. I would have done it. My wife, she was already like, oh, you would have said go, do it. But I just didn't know Fractal. That made me go buy a Fractal just so I could learn it. And I learned day one what Mason just said. Unless you know what some of these things do, you can find out real quickly how drastic it can be. Because I set up the 2 Fractal dual redundant rigs for the guitarist from this country artist here in Texas, Cole Wetzel, and they were both like, we changed one setting and now it sounds like garbage. And I was like, what did you change? And they're like, I honestly don't know where to start. There's so many little tube things, so little many all these things. And so I can understand why a lot of these Metallica, a lot of these bigger bands are, because they're so consistent. But it's interesting because like the virtual pedal board, it's cool. I just feel like it's only like 4 or 5 effects. Like, it's really limited. I could be wrong.
I think you would use it like if you were going to do like wet processing stuff.
Yeah.
With it,
That makes sense.
But
so I guess it's not out of left field for them to come out with a virtual pedal board as it is Boss coming out with the plug out or something, because I don't know, that felt like a stretch. But anyway, I digress.
Any more you wanna say about this grant? Things that stones we've left unturned that we want to delve into?
I mean, I'm pretty happy at this point. I think I'm a little disappointed in myself that I couldn't stir stuff up a little more today. So I apologize. I'm a little off my game. Next week I will come with some real spicy questions for you.
Should I just say like your opinion is trash and you know nothing as like a clickbait? It'll be,
let's polarize this thing. All right, let's just go nuts here and
all right,
see
Brian,
what happens.
You're Stephen A. Smith.
No, I mean, if we're wrapping it up in final thoughts, I leaned more on the side of stay in your lane type of thing, but I understand Grant's point of view of like you're open to seeing other companies be a little risky. I'm also on the boat of seeing companies be risky like RJM and it not, being a huge big explosion of success with like their overdrive pedal or whatever. But it's always interesting to see companies come out with new stuff and you just go, oh, okay, and I never saw that, like Strymon. They'll probably release a Strymon toaster tomorrow. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't think I needed that. But it just sent Bluetooth from my phone on my alarm clock went off, and it turned on my toaster to make my sesame whatever bagel. So, I mean, it's stupid nonsense. But,
I didn't take you as a sesame bagel guy, Brian.
I like everything bagels, really, with a lot of butter. You butter believe that.
You go.
Well, yeah.
No, not a cream cheese guy.
No, I don't like cream cheese. I don't like a lot of cheeses.
You like caraway, but you don't like cream cheese.
When you said caraway or tearaway, like pants.
Caraway. Well, probably both. You know, I watch a lot of Magic Mike. So
You never know.
Tearaway pants. No, caraway. It's those seeds that are on the every
I see. Yeah, no.
It's kind of an intense flavor.
Oh, interesting. It definitely is intense. Good thing I work alone, so no one has to smell my breath. But that's it for me. I'm always open to seeing new companies come up with new things. So I guess we'll see what happens.
I guess until Strymon comes out with their tearaway pants, we'll call it for today. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Brian. And we can combine your name again if you want to sound,
I'm ready for it.
A little more interesting, a little more European. We thank everybody for being here. And again, if you want to listen to us on Spotify, you want to listen to us on Apple, you want to listen to us on Audible, which I think is Amazon. We're in all those places. You can take us in your car. This is our 202nd episode. So we've been at this for a few years now, every single week. So thank you so much for being here. Please write us a review on any of those podcast stations if you listen on those particular formats. Join us on YouTube if you're not already. Chairman of the Boards. We also have a Facebook group where we talk about all things related to guitar pedals, tone, etc., and is a great place to receive DIY advice. Brian, Grant, and I are often there answering questions, so don't be bashful. Join up, absolutely free. It's just in Facebook groups. Type in Chairman of the Boards, and you will very easily find it. Until next week, we'll see you all.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.